So, I was asked a pretty direct question as it pertains to mixed martial arts, and it was such a good question that I rarely get asked nowadays that I figured I'd actually make a video on this, because I have been asked this throughout all my years, even since high school, of this very particular question. Nowadays everyone's just kind of like whatever, because it doesn't seem to be such a big deal anymore, but I'm always asked why ground game, submission, or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, if not all three combined, whichever you want to call it, it comes before all else. And particularly what was asked was, why do you favor submissions and ground game over striking and kickboxing? Well, let's take a detailed look at why. The short explanation that I give, if I'm being sarcastic about it, would have to be something along the lines of, oh, you can punch and kick effectively. So cool. You know, that was at least my high school response. But in a more detailed way, martial artist to martial artist, I would give a much better and detailed explanation into why, but you know, I figure fuck it, I'll just answer this question in video form. I already answered it, and to the individual that asked, I figure let's just double it up. So anyways, this is what I would say to someone who is being serious and who actually wants to know why I favor ground game submission above all else, as if it's the be-end all type of martial art out there, whether it be any sort of ground game, any sort of judo, whether it be Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or just, you know, plain judo. This is why. Here you go. To go about it in a more, shall we say, professional method, I will start out with that, and then kind of elaborate as I go along. And yes, this is just reading from my reply, but it's still just as, you know, effective, at least to me. So I would reply, men and women, students of Jiu-Jitsu, meaning all ages, all backgrounds, etc., learn how to safely and effectively defend themselves against a larger, stronger attacker. Instead of relying on striking, Jiu-Jitsu utilizes proven submissions, joint locks, and principles of leverage and momentum to subdue an opponent without being super muscular or a tough person at all. You could be the smallest guy or the smallest gal that there could ever be, right? And completely destroy the biggest, most muscular guy all around, meaning he is pure muscle from his freaking, you know, jaw to his toes. And that person who knows judo would wreck him. All because of judo. It is a known fact that 90% of all violent attacks, now this is outside of just cage fighting and outside of just martial arts. This I bring to a commonplace scenario, such as a bar fight or defending your family or, you know, randomly being jumped, etc., etc. So it appeals to literally anyone at any point in time. 90% of all violent attacks end up on the ground. Regardless if you're a man or woman, being taken to the ground by an attacker is a very scary situation. As such, Jiu-Jitsu focuses on how to protect yourself while on the ground. Law enforcement, military, security personnel all have incorporated Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu into their self-defense training because of the art's form and ability to effectively and efficiently control an attacker, regardless of weight, height, and or strength. So think about that the next time somebody says that striking and kickboxing is the best and the be-all, end-all. Just because the UFC glorifies knockouts, and boy do they ever, you know, given this impression that it's just so cool, much less, you know, whatever else, I guess, ego-driven people think when they're going with the whole striking is, you know, the be-all, end-all. That said, the most realistic and or effective style to fight by is submissions, joint manipulations, and ground game defense. Yeah, striking is all cool and you feel like a total badass tough guy if you knock somebody out, but is it really that effective though? Is it really that great? People with big egos say that it's just people rolling around with each other, or just are ignoramuses, if not the combined ego with being an ignoramus. But regardless, ground game by far has the others beat. You put a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or traditional Judo guy against a kickboxer or wrestler, guess who's gonna win? Yep, you guessed it, the Judo guy. Unless inexperienced, but that would definitely put up his own against the person by far more so than it would any other way around. In striking, you need that lucky hit, that perfect hit to the jaw, or if the person has a glass jaw and they're just easy to knock out, and that's what a lot of people are hoping for and going for. But a lot of striking really depends on getting that good hit to the jaw for the knockout, which in a lot of cases people are always moving around, bobbing their head, blah blah blah, so it's not actually the most efficient, effective, and realistic way to go about doing things if we're talking about a dependence, shall we say, or a one style, or whatever you want to call it, in the all-around big picture of things. Likewise, if they're weak to a good strike to the stomach, abdomen, ribs, in that general area, and it leaves you open for many attacks, and of course, easily to reverse when you're striking, especially against a grappler. All we need to do, you don't even need to be smart with your punches. I mean, you could just punch in our general direction, and if we are in grabbing distance, you're fucked. That's literally all it takes, is just being in our grabbing distance. As soon as we grab you, strikers are done. Submission, joint manipulation, judo ground game takes skill, endurance, and doesn't rely on a lucky hit. It's all on you and your skill, with minimal risk, generally speaking. So don't even try to tell me that standing up, striking, kickboxing is even in the same realm of importance as judo ground game. By far, the most important skill you could learn is judo or any form of ground game. Yes, even traditional wrestling, mat wrestling from high school is a lot better than striking. And yes, I will admit, having a stand-up game helps you become a better fighter all around in the big picture of things. You have your stand-up and your ground game, and that's fucking awesome, as it helps fend off people to a certain extent, but is the least important of the two styles. Meaning, of the two styles, ground game, striking is the least important. It's the initial bring-in, per se. Like, you can start out with striking, but it's 90% of the time, it will go to the ground. So if you can't finish it before it goes to the ground, you're fucked, right? Unless you have ground game. But if you're someone who's great at ground game already, all they have to be is in your grabbing distance, bada bing, bada boom, they are fucked, not you. But anyway, I will say two styles are always important. Don't depend on just one. Anyways, ground game should come first, as it is the most important. Then stand up, because it is the least important. Then you will be a wonderful, well put together fighter, or he or she who can effectively defend his or herself. A perfect replacement for kickboxing and striking is American Kempo. As such, American Kempo incorporates striking, but also joint manipulations and all sorts of other awesome defense mechanisms and techniques that really are realistic and come in handy. It also will help incorporate grappling and other things of that nature too in the long run. That's why I personally have that as my top two. American Kempo, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Fucking beast. I love it. Anyway, if you really look into it and really unbiasedly look at both respective styles, both ground game and stand-up, you'll see exactly what I mean. People usually go for the knockout and believe that kickboxing is so badass and effective because of movies and the UFC overly glorifying it. But if you take away the over-glorification and look at effectiveness in realistic scenarios to which would be most helpful, you'll notice instantly that ground game is the way to go. And I'll leave it at that, I suppose. Until next time.